Absolutely fascinating. Now, I want to talk about another big issue, and you've written about it at thehill.com. U.S. debt, and this is a crazy number to me, is about to surpass 35 trillion. That's trillion with a T, U.S. dollars. Inflation is at a 40-year high. CPI continues to rise. Biden seems to have lost a bit of control of the economy here. Tell us about just how dire and dangerous this situation is, and why are red lights not flashing everywhere over these numbers?
They're flashing in a lot of places. The places those red lights are not flashing, unfortunately, is the voters. I remember sitting in the Oval Office one time, James, in 2017 when I was the budget director, and a very prominent Republican had my budget, which was described as the most conservative since Reagan. And he leaned across the resolute desk to President Trump and said, "Mr. President, I like Mr. Mulvaney. He's really good with numbers. But let me make one thing perfectly clear. He's not elected, and you are. No one has ever lost his job in this town for spending too much money. They have lost it for spending too little." That's a Republican senator talking to a Republican president. The country is now $35,000 billion in debt. That's what $35 trillion is. And the red lights are flashing. You're finally starting to see Wall Street pay a little bit of attention to it. You're saying international markets pay a little bit of attention to it, but still not much. The Dow Jones Industrial Average hit a historic high today of 40,000. So it's not really filtering through the economy, but it is starting to get some attention. It's just not registering with voters. And until it registers with voters, spending is not going to change.
Yeah, well, I mean, I reckon you got all that money pumped into Wall Street and everybody else. If people start to realize how little's behind that, that could be a bit problematic. But also on the economy, this was fascinating to me. Joe Biden has announced that the U.S. is going to raise tariffs on imports from China by $18 billion and also tax Chinese-made EVs. It seems to me that these are really Trumpian kind of policies that he's going with. Does this suggest that Trump has basically won the argument on protection versus free trade?
Yeah, I think he has. And I think even the Democrats, many Democrats will admit it. Keep in mind, these are the same programs now that Biden is either continuing or reinstating that he attacked during the 2020 campaign. They always get some of that in campaigns, right? You're always going to take the opposite side of the person you're running against. But I think even Democrats are recognizing now that Donald Trump was right on how to deal with China. Trump's attitude was, look, you can't treat them like you would treat Australia, England, France, are first world nations when it comes to trade. Free trade is for free nations, not for communist nations. And that is now a bipartisan attitude in Washington, D.C. What's going to be interesting to see, James, when we get to that debate, for example, is who's going to be harder on China, Trump or Biden, because they'll both be fighting with each other to get even more restrictive on policies regarding that communist nation.